Hello! Today we are going to learn how to make mugs. I'm just going to try to do this really quick, not try to do anything extra, just give you the basics, and then when you watch it again, you can fast forward and just watch the parts that you want. So first of all, what we're going to be doing today is making the mug with the slab technique. If we were at school, you would have the slab roller. You just put your clay in, boom, you got the slab. It's amazing and awesome. But we don't. You're at home, so we have the other tools. This is what you're going to end up with. This is a mug that a student made. This is it before it was glazed. And she chose to do like a little honeycomb, and then she put little bees on it. And then this is her handle. She also did one like this, that if you want to carve, this will be carving. We'll be thinking about that later, but I just want you to see it. She also added a cute little spoon so you could stir, and then there's a little hole, and you could put your little spoon back in there. So these are some of the mugs that students have made, and that's what you're going to be doing. So to start off with, you are going to have your tools. You are going to have your slurry. This is your wooden smoothing rib. You're going to have your wire cutter. You're going to have this two different ribs, okay? So remember, this is the scoring rib with all the jaggeds on it, and this is the smooth rib that is smooth, and this is what you're going to be smoothing your mug with. Don't get these two confused. Scoring, smoothing. You want both of those. You're going to want your needle tool for cutting. You're going to want these sticks for measuring the thickness of your clay for the mug and keep it even. You're going to need a ruler because we're going to make a template. You're going to need a pencil. You're going to need some scissors. And you're going to need this rolling device. If your mother will let you, and if she doesn't want you to, totally understandable. But if your mom or auntie or grandma or whoever has a rolling pin and they'll let you use it, this works way better. But if you don't, that's why you have this, and it's okay. So if you want to pause, go get all your tools, have them all ready. That would be great, because I want you to do this step by step. Don't just watch the whole thing and then try to do it all from memory. You're going to want to do a step, pause, do a step, pause. Okay, so I have all my tools out. Now, here's another thing. I do have my board. If your family member, mother, father, auntie, would let you work on a counter, that would be great. But I understand if they don't want the whole big mess. The thing is, this is just almost a little bit too small, but it is workable. So if you need to, you can use that. Otherwise, I'm going to just show it on my counter. Just make sure you clean up super good afterwards. Okay. Oh, and you also need this little tool. I'm going to call this the wooden tool with the round end. This is different than the toothpick tool. This has a little pointy guy and then this little round one. And this we're going to use to smooth down on the inside, which I'll show you later. Okay, so hopefully you all have all your tools. I'm going to move this aside. I'm going to keep my tools all by me. Oh, first thing I'm going to do is make my template. Okay, so you're going to get a piece of typing paper, any kind of paper. Hopefully it's typing paper. I know some of you don't have a ruler. If you don't, just know that this is about 11 inches. So know that you're going to do the length of your template 11 inches. And I wrote that down in the notes. So 11 inches, and then the height of it is going to be 4.5 inches. And again, I put this in the notes. If you don't have a ruler, I would say, see if I fold it over my paper. It's not half, it's bigger than half, but hopefully you have a ruler. I don't know what else to tell you. You see, if I folded this over, you have about an inch. Okay, so I'm gonna measure this, and you want to measure this as even as possible because this is going to be your template. And hopefully this is where my son's videoing, and he's gonna hopefully fast forward this so you don't have to watch me just cut and be so bored. So this is your template. I would write on here template, and the reason I would write template on this is you may put both of these aside and then take your smaller one, and then you're going to have this little tiny weird baby cup. So you can just get rid of that and say template and keep this, okay? Then you're going to take your clay. Now this is important. If you have chunks of clay like this left over from making stuff, we have to wedge this. And if you don't have a nice solid chunk anymore, let me know and I will help you. But you can't use this until we wedge it. So you're going to take your clay, and remember, if this has air in it, that's why you want to wedge it before all these little gaps. So you're going to, which is the question everybody always asks, how much do I cut? If you have your ruler, it doesn't have to be exact. I would say about 1 inch. If it's a little bit more than 1 inch, that's fine. So you're going to take your wire cutter. You're going to measure down about 1 inch. Keep this as even as possible, okay? Don't just be lazy and cut it at an angle, because it'll help you if it's... Okay, nice and smooth. I got my nice little chunk of clay. I'm going to keep this wrapped. Remember, you always want to keep your clay wrapped because it dries out and then you can't use it. I'm going to put that over there. Now, if you have cornstarch, this is a great thing so it doesn't stick. Otherwise, it's going to stick on your counter or stick on your board. So if you have cornstarch, you're going to sprinkle this. If you don't, hopefully you have some flour and you can sprinkle this. If anybody's made pies, it's kind of like making a pie. So I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit of this. If you don't have flour or cornstarch, you just have to keep lifting it up so it doesn't stick. Okay, now you have to warn people in your family. You see me? You have to warn people in your family because this gets really loud. So I was doing this, my brother and sister-in-law are visiting and they were sitting quietly reading, and all of a sudden I threw it down, they both went, ah! So you want to warn people. I'm going to be throwing some clay. So here's what you want to do. I want to throw that clay. And you don't have to put the... Don't put the flour and the cornstarch down first. Oh, but maybe you do need to, because see, look, it's sticking. Oh, so you do need that flour and cornstarch. Did you see how it was sticking? Okay, so lift it up, re-smooth some cornstarch because it's going to want to stick, or flour, and throw this down. Woo! Okay, it's loud. Okay, so I've kind of got, and you see how I'm throwing it and then lifting it up? That's so it doesn't stick. And again, just kind of get this cornstarch or flour. Okay. Okay. Now, you want the thickness of the clay to be this thick. Okay, so I'm going to put these on either side. I'm going to take my rolling pin. Again, if you don't have one, use this. If you want to pound it down a little bit with your hand first, go ahead and do that. The main thing, again, if we had the rollers, it's so nice. You just put it through. But the main thing is you don't want to get it super thin in this part and then too thick over here. You want this even. So, and the other thing is, I'm going to get my template, and I know that I have to make it this long and this wide, okay? So I'm going to start rolling, and take your time and keep it as even as possible, okay? And you need to use some muscle. Okay, and the reason I have this here is because I don't want it to get any thinner than that. So you just keep rolling, and maybe about halfway through, I'm going to lift this up because see, it's starting to stick, and I'm going to put a little more of this down and flip it over. Get my template. I still have this far. I have to keep this square like that. So, and again, you want to keep this. Don't get parts too thin. You want to keep this all. So So just take your time with this. See, I'm keeping it this thickness over here. And be careful, because what I was noticing when I rolled up here, it kind of went off the boards and it got a little thin. Okay, so I'm going to take my template. I'm going to say, okay, that's pretty good. If you want to roll it just a little bit so you have a little more room, go ahead, but keep this all the same thickness. That's the tricky part. Okay, don't get this super thin, this thick. This all has to be the same thickness, or you get this little pinchy thing like this, and it's fat here and skinny here. Any questions?
No.
You sure?
Yes.
Okay. I'll have my son ask me questions if he's like, what did you just do there? Okay, so again, I don't want it I want it all the same thickness, nice and smooth. Now, when I lay my template down, I'm going to try to keep enough to make a base. But if you don't, we'll just make another piece for the base. Okay, so you're going to want to put this as far over, because I'd like to save enough to make the bottom of my pot. But if you don't, you'll just have to roll out another piece. And that's probably confusing to you, but you're going to need to measure the bottom, and I'll show you that in a minute. So we're going to try to put this over to the side. So you're going to lay this nice and even. And you're going to take your needle tool, and you're going to hold this down. And really, the thing is, take your time doing this. Don't rush it, or you'll be fighting crookedness and bad craftsmanship the whole time. So very carefully measure this and go straight down. If you wanted to use a ruler, that's fine too. Okay, so I cut all the way around there, and now I'm going to lift this up. Ooh! And I'm going to very carefully, because I'm going to use these other pieces for my handle and the bottom, I'm going to lay those aside for a minute. And then I'm going to take this piece and just kind of make sure everything is nice and even, okay? Now, this is very tricky, and I wasn't going to have you all do this because it's tricky, and when we're in class, it's even tricky. So watch this carefully. Okay, I am going to make a slanted cut on this side. Can you see this close up? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm holding this like a pencil, slanted, not straight up and down, slanted. And I'm going to cut this at an angle. I'm cutting this at an angle. Okay, straight down. So this is like a little angle. It's not straight anymore, that edge. Then, in order to do, please remember this, I'm going to pick this up, flip it over, and I'm going to do the same thing. You have to flip it over. Oh, good. Close up. Okay. Cut this at an angle. Do you see how this is at an angle? It's not straight up. It's at an angle. And you're going to cut this at an angle. Then you have to flip this over. Don't try to cut it right now. You're going to flip this over. And you're going to do the same thing at an angle. Again, not straight up and down, at an angle. And you're just going to go very carefully straight down. Don't take too much off or you'll get a really skinny cut. So this is at an angle and this is at an angle. Okay, so now I'm going to get my slurry. And this is, now sometimes I would say if you could like go get a little snack or take a 5-minute break and let this just sit out for a little bit, that would be great. Don't let it sit out too long or it'll crack and dry. But I'm just going to start doing it right now. But if it's a little firmer, that's better. Now, scoring. See, this is super. You really kind of want it a little firmer so it doesn't wobble so much. And you get that by just letting it sit out just like 15 minutes. But don't forget about it and leave it or let your siblings come and play with it. You'll be very annoyed. But let's say I let this dry. Right here, where that little angle is, I'm going to score. And then I'm going to slurry. Remember, you want to dab that in there.
Is that 2 directions? 2 different directions of scoring?
Yeah, best to do it in 2 different directions so it kind of makes little X's. And then I'm going to flip this up. This is my other side. And I'm going to score and make little X's. And then I'm going to slurry this. You don't have to add too much because especially if you've let it sit for a little bit, yes, you really want to do this. But my clay is super wet. Now I'm going to bring these. Can you get close up? Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm going to bring these. See how they measure? They match up because of that angle. They're cut at an angle. And I'm going to match these up right along that seam, and I'm going to gently push that together. Okay, so I'm going to take my fingers. You want to make this even, and see that little gap? You're going to want to push that, and just take your time doing this. Push that till that slurry squishes out. See how that's squishing? And you want to make sure that this doesn't get too thin right here. So keep this right matched up. Okay, this would be another time that I would say, or if you want to make 2 mugs at the same time, then you could go and start doing another mug. And this can just dry just a little bit, not too much. Okay, so I'm going to smooth this, not overly. And I'm going to let this rest just a few minutes. Okay, I've let this rest. And let's say it's like you rested it for 10, 15 minutes. Again, you just don't want it to be super smushy. Okay, now I've come back. And you can go in on that inside with your thumb. And just smooth that line. Don't make this too thin. If it gets too thin, you're going to make a little baby coil and put that in there so it's not too fragile, okay? Now I'm going to try to round this. Make this as round as I can. I don't want it, what?
Do you want to take a break to let it dry?
Nah. I don't want it ovally. You want to make it round, okay? I'm saying not to take a break because I'm just showing you how to do it, and this won't be my perfect mug. And it holds its shape. If it's 15 minutes, let it dry, not more. Again, if you forget it, you're going to have to start over and you might not have enough clay. Okay, so I've rounded this. Now I'm going to bring this piece back. If this piece isn't big enough, you're going to have to just roll another piece. So hopefully mine is just barely big enough. Barely, barely, barely. And I'm going to just push it out there. Can you...
That seam, how smooth should that seam be?
Oh, we're going to work at smoothing this later. Okay. Right now it's just too soft and smushy. Okay. I don't want... But good question. Very good question. You don't want to overwork that right now. So I'm looking down. I'm making sure this is nice and round. From looking down. Can you see down in there? And let's say your clay is just almost works. It's just a little bit too tiny. You could do a 1-2 roll. Just don't get it too skinny. Okay, and then I'm going to put it back on here. I'm going to make sure this is round. Remember, take your time. You want a nice mug that you could keep forever. Now I'm going to take my needle tool. And I'm going to go straight down, not at an angle, straight down. If you can't find your needle tool, you can always use a knife. And I'm just going to go right around the base. Okay, right around the base. Okay, now, ta-da, I have my base. Okay, keep these because we're going to make the handle with that. Okay, again, this is super soft. And I will be helping you as we go along. And if something goes awry, I'll help you. Remember, clay is super forgiving. So if you make a mistake, just rearrange it, gently push it out, just so that you like how it's going in the nice round shape. Now I'm gonna make sure this is all nice and flat, and I'm going to score. Can you see that?
Yeah, maybe hold it up.
Okay, I'm gonna score that. And slurry. Score and slurry, score and slurry. Always score and slurry. Remember, you want to do it deep enough so that it... I'm going to score all of this. And then I'm going to... Hopefully this is a little drier. Like mine is super wet, so it gets smushy and wavy. And if it was a little drier, it would be a little firmer. And I'm going to score the bottom of this. Okay, so I scored that, and I'm going to put a little slurry all the way around here. Okay, nice and slurried, and I'm going to set this on the top. Okay, if you can get from the top again. Okay, you're going to want to gently push this down. And if you can, kind of turn it and mush it down in there, okay? So it's nice and firm in there, okay? Now, this is the part, and I think you should do this. You see down inside there, I am going to make you might have these that you cut off from when you made the cuts, the angles. I'm going to roll this. It doesn't have to be a perfect little snake. Remember we did those little snaky coils? I'm just going to make a little piece of clay here, and hopefully it's nice and soft. And I'm going to lightly score and slurry. Okay, and I'm going to put this down in the base, and I'll show you. If your hand is big, this is when this tool is very helpful. Like if you're like, my hand's too big, it doesn't fit in there, I can't do it. You're going to use this little guy. And can you see down in there?
Yeah.
Okay, so take this little tool and you're going to, well, I have to look, but I'm going to mash it in all the way around. So can you see how it's in there? It doesn't look very good, but I put it in there and I see, oh, I need a little bit more because it didn't go all the way around. This is just going to keep, so I'm going to make another little guy. Doesn't need to be very fat. If it's too fat, you'll have a weird thing at the bottom. And see, it's not perfect. I'm going to score this. I'm going to slurry. And I'll show you. I'm going to put this, again, big hands, you're going to need to use this little stick. And if it's too big, pinch off a little piece and let me get that out of there. Oops, I took the whole guy out. Okay. I'm just laying that around the base. Oopsie. My fingers are sticky. Again, if your hands are too big, just use this guy. Okay, so you see that snake down in there?
Hold it there for 1 second. Okay.
Okay, now I'm just going to take, I don't know if I can do this. I'm going to take this tool and kind of go along the side. And I'm going to blend that in really good. Just take your time. You're going to mush that in. I'll show you how it looks. See how I'm mushing that in?
Wait.
With the corner of this guy that's like a little thumb. So I'm going to smooth that. I'm kind of curving it around like this. Like a whoop, whoop, whoop. And I'm going right around the base. And just take your time to get that super, super smooth, okay? You don't want to see any gap, any place air can come in. So I'm just kind of going around like this. Whoop, whoop. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Whoop, whoop. It's just like to get that all smooth. Remember craftsmanship? You're going to be drinking out of this mug.
So that the roundness of that tool is defining the roundness of the wall to base.
Yes, yes, yes.
So if you go right alongside it, that roundness will be the right sort of smooth.
It'll smooth it. See? Can you see inside there?
Let me see. Go down just a little. Oh.
I hope it looks smooth.
Yeah, it does. I think they get it.
Okay, now if you look out here, you see how awful that looks? I don't know if you could see that.
Yeah.
This is like, there's a gap there. That is when you take your smoothing rib. This isn't your scoring rib, or this little wooden rib works really well. And you're gonna go right along the outside of this. And I'm doing this super fast, so if you're gonna want to take your time, and this is kind of carving around here, okay? See how that got rid of that line? Does that show in the...
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm gonna go all the way around. I don't want that gap. See that gap? I'm gonna carve around that.
So are you tapering that bottom there?
Well, you don't really want to taper the bottom, but here's the deal. If you want to make your mug a different shape, this is the time you could do it. You could, if you wanted to, every now and then kind of pat it down so that makes sure it stays flat and round. And mine got a little out of shape, so you put your hand in and just kind of gently push out so it's even. Okay, now, as Skylar was saying earlier, I am going to also smooth that seam with this. I'm just going to go up and gently smooth that seam, okay? So now you have your mug shape, and, oh, sorry. Now you have your mug shape. And this is when I would let it maybe dry a little bit. You can, once it starts to dry, if you see, this is where my seam was and it got a little bit thin, you can always take just a little bit of clay and score and slurry right where that little seam is and put an extra piece of clay and smooth that in. But hopefully it doesn't get too out of whack, and then just use this to smooth. So you're gonna let this dry a little bit. Now that's the trick. If we were in school, I would say let this dry until tomorrow. Like, don't wrap it super tight, but I'm afraid that you might leave it out and then it dries and you have to start all over. So maybe just finish this today, and then you only can let it sit out maybe with your bag. I don't have can you get me a little bag in there? Because we want to smooth, smooth, smooth. You are going to spend a lot of time. And if your hand gets like all clayey like this, it's going to be hard to smooth because you got messy hands. So you're going to want to get your hands washed. I would get like a bag like this and just set it like this. Okay? And then the next day you have to work on it or wrap it up nice and tight, okay? Because if it gets too dry, I'm going to show you how to do a handle. Again, you might want to wait till this is, they call it leather hard. It's just not super soft. But I'm going to show you the handle. Hopefully, again, you have enough of this. I don't think I have enough. So I would need to roll out because I'm going to need, I think I put down here, You need 7.5 inches. Look at what a mess I'm making. Oh, I smushed my mug. I don't think this is 7.5. Oh, no, it's not 7.5. Oh, is this 7.5? Maybe this little strip is. Okay, this little strip is about 7.5. So I'm just going to make this about the size of a ruler. It's really about 3/4 of an inch if you want to measure that. Okay, so I cut this. It's about 3/4 to an inch wide, and you want it 7.5 inches long. Again, if you don't have enough, you're just going to need to roll out another piece. Don't try to attach them. They're going to break. You need one solid strip. So if you don't have enough, you're just going to need to roll out, slice off another piece and roll it out to this thickness, okay? So now I have my little size handle. This is about 7 inches. That'll work. Now, this is the important thing. Should I move this? People want to add their handle like this. This is so wrong. Don't do this. No, this is not strong enough. You are going to want to, can you get close here? Attach it this much and then attach this much. Okay? So I'm bending it and attaching it there, and I'm bending it and attaching it here. So I'm going to make my handle. You kind of want it in this shape, like a question mark. And then I'm going to get my scoring rib. And I'm going to score right where it's going to be attached. And I'm going to score.
You want to actually flip it around so the light is, well, that it's sort of facing that way.
And I'm going to slurry. And then where it bends, where I'm going to attach it, oops, wrong rib, I'm going to score. And then it's going to attach down here. So I'm going to score. And I'm going to slurry. And I'm going to slurry. And I'm going to attach it again, this thickness. And then this is going to attach all the way there. And then you're going to really push that in. Hold it on the inside and push. Hold it here and push. Okay, you really want to make sure. Handles love to fall out. Okay, now before you attach, you also want to make sure it's straight. Before you attach it, if you want to make any kind of a fancy design, like let's say, this isn't necessarily fancy, but let's say this is my handle. See how these are just straight? You may think, I don't want that straight edge. I want this a little smoother and rounder. So before you attach it, you may want to just smooth this edge. Okay, so it's a nice smooth edge. It's more rounded. Okay, and the other thing you could do is you could pinch down the middle just a little bit. And I know some of you, I've seen your work, you're very good and meticulous, and you may want to do this kind of thing. So see, you have like a little design there. Again, all of these will be done nicer. I'm just doing these super quick. You want to smooth this really well, and then you're going to have this cool little design. Okay? So make sure you push this. Make sure you push this. Now, you're going to let this kind of dry. Where'd that bag go?
Oh.
And I will show you the rest of what we're going to do later, okay? Keep this wrapped. Okay, and it's going to get a little firmer and a little drier. You don't want it to dry all the way, but you now have your cool little mug. And again, the next several days, just like when you made your basic snowman, you're just going to spend your time smoothing, and you could smooth with this. I'll be showing you other ways to smooth. You could get your sponge and smooth with that. This has just a tiny bit of water on it, and you could smooth with this. You're gonna really want to smooth the edge, so you could just kind of go around this with your sponge. You don't want any little weird crumbs that are gonna get in the way. Okay, see how this little sponge just kind of go around that rim and smooth, smooth, smooth. And I would also really smooth this out. It doesn't look great. Sometimes you could add just a little slurry. I would smooth it before you put it on. I just wanted to show you how to do that. And remember, you want to push that in nice and snug. Okay, so this is your basic mug. And we'll be doing more work. You're just going to want to keep looking at it. Maybe you need to get your little wooden tool and push out a little because your shape got goofy. And just take your time. This is kind of a keeper. Again, this one made their handle kind of square, which is, I like, that's very fun. And this one is kind of rounded. Again, you see that this is thicker and thicker where she attached that. And then this one, if you wanted to add a little spoon, you could. We're going to add the texture and the designs later. We're going to watch a video on if you wanted to make a little animal head. You could put a little animal head, like a little beak and little eyeballs. There's a video that shows somebody that put a little creature down in the bottom. They scored and slurried just a little something at the bottom. So when you drank your hot cocoa, oh, what's that in the bottom of my mug? Okay, but that's your mug for now. And phew, hopefully Skylar can fast forward a lot of this. That's my wonderful assistant. And it won't take as long to watch it, and you can just watch the parts that you want. I'll also list some other videos that show how to do this. I just wanted to make sure I had the parts in that you all needed to do and using the tools that you have. So if your mom would let you use this, oh, so important. Make sure you clean everything up. I don't want anybody's mom coming in or dad or somebody and saying, you made a mess in my kitchen, because I wouldn't like this mess in my kitchen. And all of this is dangerous. Remember, throw this away. Don't put it down the sink. You can save this clay. I will be showing you how to wedge later. And then put this clay back in your bag, because we don't want to waste anything. Wrap that up nice and snug. Maybe put the little wire on it, and then you could just throw some of this clay away. Don't put it down the drain. Wash all your tools, get all the clay off. Scrub your counter so there's no clay if your mom comes in, especially if you just use the counter. If you use this, that's okay. Even if you use this, put the flour or the cornstarch on this as well. And if you're like doing this in your bedroom, or if you have any kind of a hard surface, but you could still roll this. If you see the template, just fits. So it's okay. Okay, have fun. I'll be helping you every step of the way, and yay!